Hi, Wen Wen. Nice job on the case study. I'm about to give you my commentary on it by video, and then you could do a response to the commentary either by video or in writing. If you do by video, you've got a limit of 5 minutes, and you could do it on Flipgrid or any other way you want. I use Screencast-O-Matic, and then I upload it to YouTube, and you could do that if you wanted. If you do video, it's limited to 5 minutes. If you do writing, you've got a limit of 2 pages, double spaced. And the key to the response to the commentary is just jump right in. You don't need a big, long introduction or anything like that. You would just do something like the following. You just sort of say, like, thank you for your commentary. My understanding of your commentary is that you made the following points. I'm going to respond to those now, and then just get right into it. Okay, remember, you've got limited space, so you want to be nice and concise. That actually leads me to my commentary itself, and I'm going to try to limit my commentary to 5 minutes. So I'm at 1 minute in, so hopefully I'll be done before I get to minute 6 here. And my commentary is actually pretty straightforward because your argument, your case study is well done, but in a way, I feel like you didn't get to the argument itself until kind of page 3, end of page 2. Page 3, well, maybe middle page 2, when you get into the harms of reducing the amount of children we have, and you're very specific with it. You give a really good argument there. But what I think is you didn't need a lot of the first page and a half. And you spend a paragraph talking about other reasons people don't have kids, and then you get into the children of today already suffering from climate change. And what I would like to see you do, remember, you're not redoing it. This is just a response to my commentary. But what I'd like to hear more about are the arguments on both sides, but about just elaborating on the issue of why we should not feel a moral obligation to limit the number of children we have. And so in a way, it's an opportunity for you to expand on what you've done in the second half of your case study as it is. So you mentioned a couple things in your case study which I thought were really good. First of all, you mentioned that population growth is only one part of the global CO2 emissions. And I think what you could do with that point is to talk about why we would focus on that as a major way to curb CO2 pollution as opposed to focusing on other things. You ask that question, you say, why do we start with population? What I think you could do there is sort of talk about why we shouldn't a little bit more. You give a great argument when you talk about negative population growth, and you gave the great example of China. And you talk a little bit about the need to find balance here. So, and you raise this argument about, what's the point of trying to make the world better if you're making the world better, but the species is extinct because people haven't had kids. You also give a really good argument about depriving the people the joy of having children. I like that. A lot of students did this case study, but they didn't do that issue. I think that's an important issue. The idea that it's something fundamentally human to be able to reproduce as one sees fit. But, we could talk about whether not a government imposition of reproduction, limiting reproduction, but whether just individuals have a moral responsibility on their own to voluntarily limit the number of children that they have. Now, I think your point would still be valid, though, right? You might still say it's too much to ask somebody to give up a very human desire to maybe have multiple children, even voluntarily. It's just different than a more trivial desire like having a fourth car. And so it's not ethically appropriate to suggest that that's a moral obligation to, override a basic human need or drive. But I think one thing that I know some people have done is talked a little bit about that counter argument, right? About, well, there is this large harm done to the planet of every human being born onto it, and in some countries more than others, right? So that's something that you could possibly do, is connect it to the idea of like, well, is there an obligation in rich, affluent, developed countries that have very high per capita CO2 emissions or not? But I think you've got the makings of a really great case study here. So I think in your commentary, just expanding on a few things, talking about any other arguments you see about why we should not limit them, making clear that even voluntary limitations are not okay and why, and also talking a little bit about arguments on the other side in terms of the severity of the CO2 emissions. And remember, I think there's two concerns: harm to planet and harm to the kids themselves. You can maybe speak about each of those. I'm looking forward to hearing from you. Really like this case study. You really seem to learn from the first case study, so great job, and I'll look forward to hearing more.